Welcome to the presentation Polygonal Modeling. Let's first discuss what a polygon is. When three or more vertices/points are connected by edges and form a face, this is considered to be a polygon. Polygons themselves are flat, but put a bunch of them together and you get a polygonal mesh, which are your 3D objects. Depending on how many sides your polygon has, it can either be a triangle, 3 sides, a quad, 4 sides, or an n-gon, where n is equal to the amount of sides. When creating 3D models, you want to try to stick to quads because having triangles or n-gons can cause a lot of problems in your geometry. You may run into issues when deforming, animating, smoothing, or rendering your object. So quads are the preferred polygon, not just in cinema, but across 3D softwares. However, sometimes it just can't be avoided, and since this is an intro course, I will not be too harsh about it. Just try to avoid them whenever possible to get into the habit of it. So now that we know what polygons are, let's discuss polygonal and box modeling. Polygonal modeling is an approach for modeling objects using polygon meshes. This involves destructing your geometry to get access to the individual points, edges, and faces of your polygons. Box modeling is a technique that starts with a basic primitive shape as the starting point. This primitive shape is then made editable, and you begin to model the polygons in stages by adding more and more details in each stage until you reach the final model. A primitive object that is no longer parametric, meaning that it no longer has parameters, is considered to be an editable object. To make an object editable, you can click on this button right here, or use the shortcut C on your keyboard, or right-click in the Objects Manager and find Make Editable in that menu. A few things to notice when you make an object editable. The first is that you lose the object's parameters. So now in the Attributes Manager, you only have 3 tabs instead of 4. Your object's name also changes from, in this case, a cube object to a polygon object. And your thumbnail changes from whatever your shape was, in this case it was a cube, to a polygon. When you make an object editable, it loses its parameters, but it opens its modes. These modes allow you to decide which part of the object you will edit. You have points mode, edges mode, or polygon mode. You can also go back to model mode, which is the mode that allows you to select your entire object at once. Once you have an editable object and are able to access the modes, you can alter the object differently using the transform tools. So for example, if you are in point mode and I'm going to go to my selection, select a few points, and then move them out. Similar thing with edge mode. I can select an edge, move it. I can select 2 edges and rotate them. I could go to my polygon mode, select a face, and scale it. Something like this would have never been possible using parametric objects. So these kind of modifications are now destroying the object, because the only way for me to go back to the shape that it had is to go to undo. But if I'm already a lot of steps in, undo might not allow me to go back to my primitive object. So just be aware that any change that you make now with your transform tools will be permanent unless you undo. So in this case, let's say I select these 2 points. You can see that my axis right now is at the average of both of these points, so right in the middle. If I go to scale it down, they will be scaled. Right now I'm going to scale in X. They're going to scale towards the axis. So this is one way for me to get those 2 points closer together so that this makes more of a point. Play around with this, play around with the different modes, use your transform tools that you already know how they work, but now they just open up a new world of possibilities. Another thing is that before you make an object editable, you have access to the attributes, so use them as you need them. So let's say, for example, that I needed a cube that was split halfway in every direction. I could add segments, right? So now it's split halfway in every direction and make it editable. And now I have 4 polygons on the top of this cube. So before making something editable, make sure that you take advantage of what parametric modeling can do. For example, if I wanted to fillet before making it editable, I can do that. Now that you have so many things to select, let's discuss some more selections. The brush selection has some attributes that we have not yet discussed. First, the size, which allows you to change the diameter of the selection brush. So if you need to select fewer things or more things, you can alter the size of the brush itself, and whatever falls underneath the circle will be selected. Then you have a very important check, which is visible only. This check allows you to select only the things that you see or select through your entire click. So if I am in point mode and I have visible only checked on, and I go about selecting some points, only the things that I am seeing in my camera will get selected. However, if I check that off and do the exact same type of selection, it selects through the entire object. Imagine my click has a laser that just goes through things, so it selects things that I clicked through, even if my camera was not directly looking at them. This is a concept that you really need to understand because you can make some very big mistakes without realizing by selecting through an object and working, and then looking around your object to realize that you messed up the other side. Moving on to other selections that are found in the selection menu, you can access the selection menu by clicking and leaving the selection pressed, and there you see rectangle selection, lasso selection, and polygon selection. First, rectangle selection allows you to create a marquee, and whatever is in the marquee will get selected. Create one by clicking and dragging anywhere on your viewport. The attributes here are tolerant selection and visible only. We already covered visible only, and it works the same in all selections. So let's cover tolerance selection now. The way that this works is that if it's checked off, you only select things that are completely covered by the marquee. But if it is checked on, you select anything that your marquee touches. Lasso selection allows you to draw a lasso and create a selection with whatever is inside of it. You have tolerant selection and visible only as its attributes. Again, these attributes work the same in every selection. Click and drag to draw and release the mouse when you're done with your selection. The last one is polygon selection, which allows you to draw a hard edge polygon with your mouse. And to finish it, you have to close the last point to the first point. Imagine this as a hard interpolation spline. You also have tolerant selection and visible only. One more selection that we will cover is the loop selection. The loop selection allows you to select around an entire loop in any of the 3 modes. The shortcut for it is UL on your keyboard. This means you will press U first, let it go, and then press L. You can also find it in the select menu up here. Please note that with the loop selection, if you want to select a vertical loop, you need to hover over a horizontal line or edge. If you want to select a horizontal loop, you need to hover over a vertical line or edge. Alright, so now that we have modes and selections down, let's discuss our main 3 modeling tools. The first one is the extrude. Extruding, by definition, is to force out or thrust, so the extrude tool will push your geometry either out or in. Take out a cube, make it editable, and go to polygon mode. Select the face using your brush selection. And to find extrude, there's a variety of ways. You can right click, and here you have all of the tools that you can use in polygon mode. So here you can find extrude, or you can use the shortcut for it. There are two different ones, D or M and T. Another way to find it is here on the left side menu and clicking on it once. Click and drag to the left to extrude inwards, and click and drag to the right to extrude outwards. It is very important that when you are doing extrusions, you're doing it anywhere on your viewport that is not right on top of the face or on your axis. If you click on the axis, you're not doing an extrusion. You are just moving that polygon. Notice the difference. This is with the axis. This is an extrusion. You see that blue loop edge that just got added? That tells you that you are creating a new extrusion. Every time that you let go of your mouse, you are creating a brand new extrude. You can tell by the segment divisions that you see here. This is all new geometry. So notice what the extrude is doing. It is taking whatever the shape of this polygon is, and I'll click and drag towards the right, and it is pushing it out and creating a whole new loop of geometry. All of this is brand new and it was not there before. So now this is more things that I can further manipulate. So I selected both of them by holding shift. I will press D on my keyboard for my extrude tool, click and drag towards the right, and I am extruding outwards. So you can see how this way you can start to build out shapes. Now let's discuss some of the attributes of your extrude tool. First one is offset, and this is how many centimeters you are extruding. So for example, if I click and drag towards the right and start this extrusion, you will see right here that it says 33.9 centimeters. What this means is that if I select any of these polygons that were just created, here in the coordinates manager, you can see that the height of them in Y is 33.9, which is the exact same number that was in my offset. The changes that you do to your cube are all live. So, for example, if here I have an offset of 142.8 centimeters and I want to round that out to 150, you will see that once I pressed enter, I didn't create a new extrusion. I just made that same extrusion that I had be 150, and you can confirm by seeing down here. Continuing down the list of the attributes of the extrude, you have offset variation. I'm going to select all of these different polygons, press D to go back to my extrude, and I will increase my offset variation by 50%. In order to show you, I need to jump ahead to this setting called preserve groups, which means either my extrusion will happen together as one polygon, or it will recognize that all of these are separate polygons. I will check that off because offset variation needs to recognize that they are separate polygons. So here you can see that what offset variation is doing is that it is giving you random amounts of offsets between 0 and whatever the offset you have is. Subdivision means that as you are extruded, you want to have subdivisions or not. So since I started this extrusion already, I can come in here, and since it's still live, I can just click, and as I'm clicking, I am adding new segments to this. And again, this is more information for me to then further manipulate. Notice that this new extrusion already had the 6 segments added to them because it already set it here in the subdivisions. As I mentioned, your preserve groups tells you whether you're going to be extruding things together or apart. Usually it's checked on, so if I were to extrude these two here, click and drag towards the right, you see that they stay together. But if I check this off, now they are being considered as 2 separate polygons. Something important to notice is that when I check off preserve groups, maximum angle is checked off. So these two work together. What maximum angle means is that if your edge has a degree of 91 degrees or less, it will stay together. If it has a degree of more than that, as an example here, even though preserve groups is checked on, it's still considered them separate polygons. Your maximum angle is too little. So if you wanted to keep these together, you need to increase your maximum angle. Look at this demonstration of different polygons that meet at various different angles and how me changing the maximum angle alters whether the groups will be preserved or not. The other attribute in the polygon side of the extrude is create caps. By default, this is checked off. And what this means is that if I do an extrusion and then I delete this polygon on the top using backspace, you see that I can see all the way down to the bottom of this cube. Now with create caps checked on, once I do that, it leaves a copy of that same face that was there as a cap. Remember in previous weeks, we talked about caps being this lid. It keeps it there as a lid. Look at these examples. On the left, it is a cube that I extruded twice with create caps checked on. So it left a lid here and a lid here. On the right, it is one that I extruded twice, but with create caps checked off. So there is no lid here and no lid here. So if we move on to edges modes, we now get access to the edges only attributes. But notice that the regular options stay the same. So offset, offset variation, subdivisions, preserved groups. In addition, now we have rotation in the edges, which helps us determine the angle of the edge extrusion. Lastly, we have point attributes, which if you extrude a point, make sure to change to point mode, it will extrude your point outwards and bevel the edge where your point used to be. The bevel option in the attributes is how much your base is beveling, and the bevel variation is varying level of bevels when you have multiple points extruded. Moving on, we have inset. Inset works similar to extrude, but instead of extruding up or down, it extrudes in or out. It makes an offset of whatever face you have selected. And inset only works on polygon mode. So once again, using a cube, let's select a polygon face, right-click and find inset, or use the shortcut I or M plus W. You can also find it on the left-hand side. If you click and drag towards the left, you extrude inwards. If you click and drag towards the right, you extrude outwards. Please notice that when you are extruding outwards with the inset, you get some weird shading happening. This shading is telling you that your geometry is overlapping. We want to avoid overlapping geometry whenever possible. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but anytime that you see this weird shading, that means that you have a polygon on top of another polygon, which means that your geometry is broken. In the attributes, you have offset, which is how much you are extruding, offset variation, which adds variation to multiple offsets if you have multiple polygons, subdivisions, which add subdivisions between your previous edge and your newly created edge, and preserve groups, which decides whether you are going to have multiple extrusions happening together or they're all going to be considered their own polygon. Maximum angle, once again, works if preserve groups is enabled, and set a limit to the angle that will be preserved. These two extrude tools work really well in combination because you can first extrude in with your inset and then extrude down with your extrude. If you guys remember, when we were creating things like vases or cups, you had to think about the thickness of your object. If you try to create a box and you only extrude downwards, your polygons are going to be 1, overlapping, and then 2, have no thickness. You have to think about your polygons as what's building out your object. So you need to think that we are working in 3D. If we want thickness, we need to actually build that out. Lastly, we have the bevel tool, which creates beveled edges and corners. The shortcut for this is M plus S. So once again, on your keyboard, type the letter M quickly and then the letter S. Do not leave any of them pressed. It's almost as if you're texting MS to someone. You can also find the bevel tool on the left-hand side. Because we no longer have parameters, we can't simply add beveled caps or check on fillet. So now we have to do this manually with the bevel tool. You can bevel in all three modes, and you will get very different results in each. However, it is most commonly used in edge mode because you create beveled edges. Select an edge and click and drag towards the right to bevel. In the attributes, the offset is how much you are beveling, and the subdivision is how many segments you are adding. More segments equal smoother bevel. For now, that is honestly all I want you to worry about with your bevels. Do note that whenever you are beveling, that should be the last step of building your model, because anytime that you bevel an edge, you're adding new points, new polygons, and new edges that now you have to manually deal with. So you want to make sure that you're doing all of the extrusions that are necessary first, and then when you are done, you go in and you bevel the edges, because remember, rounded edges react to lighting very differently and make your final model look more finalized. It's not that you can't edit things that have beveled edges, you definitely can. It's just that now you have more things to worry about. I also do want to show you really quickly how to bevel your polygons and your points, because the bevel does allow you to do that as well. This is a bevel to the polygon, so you can see that it sort of creates rounded edges by extruding that polygon upwards and at an angle. And these are bevels to the points. So it is rounding your points by adding new geometry. When it comes to beveled edges, this is where the loop selection is very handy, because if I want to select this entire row of edges, I can go in with my brush selection and manually click and drag to select them all. Let's say I want to select this one as well and this one as well. If I forget some, I can hold Shift and continue selecting. Or I can go to Select, Loop Selection, or the shortcut UL, and just click once and my entire loop of edges will be selected. That way, as I am selecting through them, I can do MS for my bevel, click and drag. There's all my edges very easily beveled. There are a few options that are shared across all three of these tools. The first one is Real-Time Update, which is a check mark that is on by default, and it allows for all of your changes to happen in real time. If your computer is having a hard time keeping up with real-time changes, you can uncheck this and your attribute changes will only happen when you press the Apply button right below. The Apply button applies the numbers that you have set in your attributes to your object. New Transform reapplies the previous transformation onto the object. So if you want to repeat the same change, you can press New Transform. I want to briefly mention intersecting geometry, because now that we can destruct our objects, we want to be careful to not do it in a way that will have big consequences in the future. Intersecting geometry is when, in the same object, one polygon crosses another, or occupies the exact same place as another. An easy way to tell if you have intersecting geometry is if certain polygons show up black or with an odd shading over them. When it comes to this class, we're definitely going to be putting one object inside of another object, similar to what we did with the chair, but we want to avoid one object overlapping itself. And because we're not animating, it is okay that we are just kind of Legoing our objects together. But when it comes time to you animating things, you will have to think about how the deformation is happening and which objects have to be fully made out of one object and which ones can be multiple objects put together. I want to point out the two different colors that you are seeing here. These are your polygon normals. And these normals determine the facing direction of the polygon. A polygon has a front face and a back face. The front being this yellow portion and the back being this blue portion. The normal is always facing out of the front, which means that if I extrude, I am extruding towards the right and it goes outwards. If I extrude towards the left, it goes inwards. The only reason this is happening is because of how the normals are. If I were to flip my normals, you see now the blue part's on the top. If I extrude towards the right, it is still going outwards, but it is going outwards in the other direction. And if I extrude towards the left, now it's going inwards, which in this case appears to be upwards. So if by any chance this happens to you where you have some polygons that are blue and some that are yellow, make sure that you align the normals by going up to Mesh, Normals, and Align Normals. Lastly, just a bunch of selection shortcuts for you to get familiar with. The ones that I would push for you to memorize are add into a selection, Shift click, removing from a selection, Control click, and switching between the last tool you were using to your selection tool, spacebar. One more thing, if you have a point, edge, or polygon selected and you press delete on your keyboard, it will delete this polygon. So just be aware of that. I also want to mention that you should be very wary of selecting components while having any of your tools selected. For example, here I have my extrude selected, because instead of selecting it, it is possible that I can actually perform the action of the tool. So try to make sure that whenever you are selecting something, you first change to one of your selection tools, and then you change to the tool that will give you the action that you want to perform. That's it for this week's presentation.